Hello, beautiful internet family. Danny from DansTube.TV. And on today's episode of the Fearless Drone Academy podcast, I have Paris Kokonos, the founder of Sphere Drones, which is Australia's #1 drone retailer. They have a ton of different services ranging from consumer to commercial applications. They also have a repair service as well as a variety of different training services as well. So I'm really excited to dive into this interview and find out more about Sphere Drones and the future of commercial and consumer drone applications. So thank you so much for joining me today, Paris. Really excited to hear all about Sphere Drones and I guess the future applications of the consumer and commercial drone space. So just starting off for the people out there who don't know too much about Sphere Drones, could you tell us a little bit of a kind of origin story and build it up to where you are today in 2021?
Yeah, sure. So, Dan, thank you very much again for hosting me today. I always am very grateful of people who are interested in hearing our story and how we kind of founded and got to where we are today. So I guess if we roll back to when I was a young fella, I had an interest in model helicopters and airplanes. Now, having an interest in model helicopters and airplanes, you'd crash them every Saturday, you'd fix them up during the week, you'd pick them back up, and you'd fly them again on the weekend to follow. So I was very fortunate to be brought up in my grandfather's and my father's technical workshop. They used to repair and service two-way radio communications, and that's where I not only helped out my grandfather and my dad, but that's where I repaired my model helicopters Monday to Friday and got them ready to fly on for the Saturday. So if we fast forward to 2012, Dad was actually sitting on a dormant website, sphere.net.au, kind of got a revamp. He said, here it is, take it over, it's all yours, you can take on the expenses. And that's where I built spheredrones.com.au, and I guess the website that it is today is an evolution of years and years of building on a website, but fundamentally it was a passion hobby project, you could say, and it's one that definitely has turned into a little bit more than a hobby. And with the team of total of 27 employees across the country of Australia, it's turned into quite a behemoth, you could say.
Yeah, no, it definitely has, man. That was something that I was really impressed by, like some of your, I guess, aspirational goals as well for the company. So, like, can you remember what those early days were like? It sounds like it was kind of just you starting out. Like, how did it actually start? Like, what was the first kind of service you offered?
Yeah, sure. So I guess initially we were just there to sell consumer drones, and really we imported them into Australia. I actually asked Dad for $10,000. So this is how it started. So I asked Dad for $10,000, spent $1,000 on some Google AdWords spend, and purchased 4 drones. I think it was 4 or 3 drones. Those 3 drones, we sold them in the first week. So ran out of stock within the first week. So there I am, 18 years old, and I'd done the best part of $10,000 in revenue, made $2,000, and I was absolutely jumping at the bit. But those first few weeks were definitely like a lot of self-development and learning. So I was watching YouTube videos how to run Google ads. I was trying to find the right software solution to pack and put the dispatch labels on the boxes and all this kind of stuff. So it was a very scrambled time for me early on in the piece, and it was, as you said, it was just me, myself, and I. Dad was there to help, but he kind of threw me into this adventure, and from there had a friend of mine help me on the weekends to pack boxes, because I was studying at uni at the time, I could only really engage in dispatching and that kind of stuff on the weekends when I wasn't busy with university. And it was quite an interesting start to the business.
Yeah, that is a very interesting start. And I'm sure that your, I guess, perception of drones and the drone space as well has evolved and changed and pivoted so much since you initially kind of started off in that space. Can you remember what the perception of drones were back then? Like, was it hard to sell, or was it you said you sold them pretty quick, but what did people think of drones back then?
Yeah, so I guess the adoption curve was quite challenging early on. Obviously, there was a bit of awareness around drones. So drones were being used for, I guess, the perception of drones was specific around, hey, they're toys. They've got cameras on them to take photos of the beach and the environment and like the buildings and the surroundings and all that kind of stuff. So I guess if we look at the perception of what drones were, they're very much just a hobby type environment. I guess it's an onset and a breed from what the model helicopter and airplane scene was, you could say. So it was that hobbyist enthusiast falling into, oh, it's a drone, it's it hovers automatically. It's got GPS lock. It returns to home. Like there's all these little nifty features that motor helicopters and airplanes didn't necessarily have. So that was, excuse me, that was like a manual type of environment. And then they started talking, like you started getting into this automatic flight, and let me put a point here and let it fly to this location. It actually became quite interesting. So it was more of that picturesque type, oh, let me capture a nice imagery sort of environment early on. So they're the type of people that we as a business were focusing on at that point in time.
Yeah, and I'm sure like now the space is completely different, I'm sure. And well, I'm in the space as well, so I've seen the changes within the like consumer drone space. But looking through what you guys offer, it seems like almost the bread and butter or a large focus of your business is around the commercial applications and the different industries that you can service within a commercial space. So can you talk a little bit about like what services you do offer and like what it is that Sphere Drones is now?
Yeah, sure. So I guess if we roll it back, our first commercial customer was Sydney Water. So Sydney Water, actually, I had a tutor of mine at the University of New South Wales who knew that I had invested a lot of time and effort in developing the brand Sphere Drones, and this was like year 2 into university, year 2 into the business, and he introduced me to one of the gentlemen at Sydney Water, which became what we would see as the development arm of our business. So we actually went away and developed. So I studied engineering and design at university. We actually developed a water sampling system. So we talk about the evolution of our offering. The development side was the first side that kind of got applied to, I guess, the entity, and it got applied to our customers, where we actually developed like a custom type solution specific to a use case that was defined by a commercial organization, being the Water Board of Sydney. And really, if you go down the path of looking at the evolution of our product offering as a business, we're offering training. So when we sold them the solution, we had to train them on the solution. When they couldn't operate it because their team weren't there and available, we actually had to fly the solution for them. So that's where we ended up with getting our REOC. Now we look at environments like servicing and maintenance is quite important from a drone program's perspective. Maintenance is at the pinpoint of where we're at today. So being that, and we call it customer 360. So being able to support a customer regardless of who they are, what they're doing, if they're just starting out or if they're like well down the path of their drone experience, we can support them from like repairs and maintenance, training, flight operations, build a development around a use case that is being explored by them, to develop it out similar to how we did it with Sydney Water, to the point where now we've developed a software solution that manages, I guess, the end-to-end compliance of a drone program and the regulation specifications of the CASA, the CASA regulation. So it's definitely an evolution, and year on year, there's something new that comes to we call it the customer 360, something new that comes to our environment that, is triggered by the onset of a customer or on the onset of, an application or a use case. So,
yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's so exciting to hear that you are touching on so many different areas, within the training space, within the repair space, and like everything else that you're doing in the commercial space as well. It's like, it's almost baffling that it's become this like such a large entity. Just to look at it from an outsider's perspective, it's amazing to see where it's at, considering that it started with such small, humble beginnings as such, like just selling drones, such a casual kind of thing that's become a business, and by the sounds of it, like a full-time job for a lot of people. So like, what would you say would be what was the common misinterpretation of drones back in 2012? And can you think of any differences that have come out now in 2021?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think if you have a look at it, it was very consumer oriented. Drones are toys was like the conversation you were having with people. And you're still having that conversation here and there with that sort of stuff, but it was very much drones are toys. That's the way it was. And drones only have cameras on them. Whereas now that misinterpretation is being transacted into a way that, oh, what else can you do with drones? Like there's even organizations talking about like Uber delivery, there's Amazon delivery, there's Google delivery. Like there's all these sorts of like additional voices that are going on in people's minds based on the news they're seeing, based on the awareness that's being raised. And for us, like those misinterpretations that were there 2012, that drones were just toys, and now that drones will actually have applications. And you talk about, drones hard to fly. That was the conversation that you had back then. Whereas now the drones are flying themselves. You draw a line on a map and off it goes. So it's the three misinterpretations. Drones are toys is no longer. Drones only have cameras is no longer. Drones are hard to fly. It's not really the case. So, and I guess you look forward as to what the future holds is like drones are going to be used for e-commerce. Well, it's not just e-commerce. There's going to be something else out there. So, I guess the misinterpretations are quite humorous to see over the course of years. But at the end of the day, the one thing that we focus on as a business is customer awareness. How can we raise awareness of how drones are being used for the good? Not necessarily the bad, but what's the good that's the drones are doing? Like I could spin off so many different ways drones are doing good for businesses, communities, etc. That the good outweighs the bad, if any bad. So.
Yeah, for sure, man, and that's exactly right. And it's normally those few, like the minority, that are ruining it for the rest. You get that bad publicity that goes on the news. It's like a drone's crashed into a house, and then immediately everyone's like, well, that doesn't sound safe. Like all drones are bad, all pilots are bad. But that's just not the case at all. It's always that 1% or that tiny percentage that ruins it for the rest. So without kind of leading you into an answer, what do you think is the biggest threat to the drone industry?
So it's actually quite funny. Within our business, we call them the drone cowboys. So they're those people that are those negligent operators, those guys that don't necessarily follow the rules or push the boundaries of what the drones. And like the one rule that we say when flying a drone, make sure that you return your battery down to 20% and make sure you get it back to you before it gets to 20%. The drone cowboy is that person that actually brings it down at 2-3%, or the drone's actually returning to home itself. And it's those sorts of those threats are the negligence within the space, and that's where you look at enforcement. We need to look at how government is enforcing this, and CASA is doing an amazing job. But the trouble that we've got is CASA can't keep up with technology's advancements. Now, there's technology out there that will enable one operator to fly up to 100 drones. But CASA is looking at this, and the regulators are looking at it. It's not just CASA; it's a global challenge that we're facing at the moment. That regulation practices are trying to play catch up at this point, both in the consumer and the commercial space. So I think if we look at the biggest threat, it's the drone cowboys, but then also you have a look at technologies rapidly changing, technologies going fast. You have a look at 4 to 5 minute flight in 2012 is now a 50 to 60 minute flight. Now today, it's quite crazy how quickly that's evolved.
Yeah, no, it really is. That's amazing to hear. And I think for me, I have had a little bit of experience within the commercial space myself, and I've gone through the whole registration boat process and the training process to become I guess a qualified commercial pilot, and that's where it kind of opened up my eyes to some of the commercial applications. But I'm sure for the everyday consumer, the usual person who just sees a drone and doesn't really understand the applications of it, were you, when you started the process of working with some commercial entities, can you remember what those early experiences were like, and can you remember where your mind was going with that? Did you have an entrepreneurial mindset where you were thinking whoa, we can do so much with this?
Yeah, I think once you get to that commercial environment, it's very much you need to take your quick wins and deliver strongly on your quick wins. As much as you can go, oh, we can do food delivery. Oh, yeah, we can start transporting people using drones. We can start using drones to firefight, etc. We actually need to just fall back and just stop and think, okay, well, what's that one? And this is one thing that I kind of encourage our team to do is what is that next step to get us to that end goal? What is that one thing? And there's actually a great book, and I'm actually looking at it right now. It's my favorite book. It's called The One Thing. Nice. So what's that one thing that we can do to get to that next step? And that's the approach that we take with entities today is how can we slowly identify what are the quick wins that are going to get us to a point where everyone's on a same framework, same stage, where we can then build out that use case. And it might be as simple as, okay, we want to deliver drones. Sure. So how do we actually just take a drone and just take it off just to start before we even start looking at drone delivery? However, drone delivery is our vision. So what are the things that we need to do in the steps to get to that drone delivery vision?
Mm. So when you say that, do you mean that Sphere Drones is looking to deliver products using drones?
Potentially, yeah, in the
Interesting.
future. It's actually hot topic at the moment within the business. It's something that's going to be launched very, very soon.
Mm.
Yeah, we're aligning ourselves with a drone delivery solution. And hopefully before the end of this month, you'll hear some news about it. But, like that's where we're wanting to get to. We're looking at these advances. Now, drone delivery is 5-6 years away,
Mm.
even a little bit further. However, you look at 20, 25 years, it'll actually be a pivotal part of our day-to-day and our day-to-day environment.
Mm. Yeah, no, 100%, man. And that's really exciting to hear that that's the vision you're going towards, because you can see a clear trend going towards utilizing drones for a service like delivery. And for me, I would be wondering about the logistical nightmare of that. What does that
Mm.
look like? Is that
What does it
tricky?
look like? Well, it is definitely tricky. And again, technology is advancing and regulations are trying to play catch up at this point. So, but again, we're doing a fantastic job as an Australian federal government to get it to a point where, there's the UTM, there's manufacturers working alongside the air services team,
Mm.
the CASA team. But then also there's some like really, really half decent champions here locally in Australia that are fledging the way in, exploring flying that drone beyond the visual line of what site is. So there's a lot happening on in the peripherals at this point. But what does it look like if we were to really answer that question? There's a range of risk assessments. There's a range of approvals for not only the operator but then also the drone as well. So there's a lot of making sure that everything is double checked. You got your T's crossed, you got your I's dotted,
Mm.
and yeah, there's a lot of regulation that needs to be explored.
Yeah, that's extremely exciting though, man. For like, what other industries? What other industries do you think are going to start adopting drones?
I think like if we have a look at the industries that have adopted drones quite aggressively, like you have a look at mining. Like mining amazes me,
Mm.
like the way they've adopted drones. But not only are they at the forefront of technology and how they're using them, they're also building out like a lot of use cases. Other environments that are really starting to adopt is like around the government service. So, your firefighters, your police, they're really starting to enhance their drones and their drone operation. Like, in Australia, we've got some pretty fierce fires that occur.
Mm.
There's a solution out there that can inspect, and this is again alongside this drone delivery. Now, the whole concept of drone delivery, it's long distance travel. With chasing fires, there can be widespread fires. So how do we travel far distances? There's organisations out there that are really harnessing that. And then there's organisations that are in the agricultural space where they're, think about a
Mm.
paintball gun on the bottom of a drone, shooting pellets with seeds to plant seeds and plant plants. The agriculture space is aggressively taking a fast moving step there. But there's a range of industries that are really taking it on
Mm.
at this point, and harnessing technology. It's fantastic to see, and we're very, very fortunate to be at the forefront of it. And I was only speaking to a customer today where they proposed that the water sampling system that we as a business have developed, so we call it Nero, Nero. Um, you know, Prior to it, they were spending $28,000 per day to have a boat and a team operate the vessel to go collect the equivalent of what our solution now captures in half a day. So it's unbelievable, like the way technology is, enabling organizations and communities.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the other thing is when I guess people within the commercial sector start to recognize how efficient using a drone could be. Like, for example, literally what you just said there, like you're significantly improving the process. It's becoming a lot more efficient, and yeah, it gives a lot more control back to whoever it is that is, trying to run a business, for example. So that's like, it's really exciting to hear those kind of stories because, again, that taboo hopefully of drones being like either a toy or something really dangerous or associated with being like a spying tool, which has been something that's been a very common thing. People still say that to me when I'm out and about flying a drone, which is bizarre to me. But
Yeah.
that's really cool to hear. And I think the more that adoption comes through in different organizations and within the consumer space, it's going to get to a point that it is, yeah, people are going to be thinking outside of the box and trying to think, well, how can we use a drone? How can we utilize that and save time and money?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
definitely.
And like, what other kind of creative ways have you seen people using drones, either in a commercial space or in a consumer space?
Yeah, sure. So I think like the biggest sector that we've seen the adoption of drone technology is in like the agriculture space and the mining space. So measuring, so for those that aren't aware, the mining sector is quite advanced in the way the mine sites operate. They've got autonomous trucks that travel up and down, moving iron ore around. And fundamentally, one of the biggest challenges within that iron ore process is when they remove the ore body from the ground, some ore body might be too big, right? And being the ore body being too big, what that causes problems later down the track. Where so the ore body gets thrown into the truck, they move it, they take it to a crusher, the crusher crushes it, and then sends it off to the port. Now you roll that back when that ore body is transferred into the truck. Ask ourselves a question: what happens if the ore body is too big for the crusher and all these trucks are autonomous? Right. So Dan, ask yourself the question: what happens to all the trucks if the crusher stops crushing? There's a backlog.
Yeah, it's about, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
be a bottleneck.
what there's a bottleneck in the entire process. Now, a bottleneck of an hour can cost the mining organizations millions of dollars. So exploring an option, and one of my most favorite projects was actually looking at a drone that hovered above the autonomous haul trucks to see whether or not there was oversize in the rear of the trucks. And at the point it identified yes or no, is there oversize or isn't there? And if there was oversize, divert that truck A, B, C, D right instead of going to the crusher and dropping the crusher, the ore body in the crusher. So like just you stop and think about what that process looks like. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right, and what sort of savings and what sort of time efficiencies that has in itself. And these are the sorts of projects we're exposed to on a day-to-day, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
exciting. And like you said, that's solving a problem. You're literally solving a
Yeah.
problem there. Something that would be a manual process, I'm sure, which would take
Yeah.
hours for someone to inspect these autonomous trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
how do you even do it?
yeah.
You just got to wait for the crusher to get broken or shut
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what about for like people out there that are, they love flying drones and they would like to get into, potentially a space where they can get paid to fly a drone. Do you have any ideas about what that would look like for someone?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we're hiring at the moment. So anyone that is interested in getting into the drone space, we're actually looking for roles across the country. So feel free to reach out. But I guess the first tip that I would put to everyone is, and I put it to everyone that I come across, is how'd you get into it? What advice can you give me? And the first thing that I say is align yourself with a passion. So like for me, my passion was around model helicopters. I'd fly them on the Saturday, I'd break them on the Saturday, I'd repair them during the week, and I'd pick them back up and fly them on the Saturday. And for me, that was aligning myself with passion. It was something I really, really enjoyed, and tinkering and getting online and building stuff, coding. That was something that I aligned myself with. So someone that's looking to get into the space, is there an industry or is there something that you're passionate about, photography or surveying or even down the path of like around like the architecture or real estate or something like that you're passionate about, and see if there's someone in that space that is owning it with drones, right? Educate yourself about their business and go and introduce yourself. Hey, I've got a passion about this. I've got an interest in drones, and if you can get some cheap drones. You can probably spend about $100 max and buy a drone to get exposed to it. But really understand what your passion is, who is leading it within that space, and then potentially reaching out. But if you really want to go down the path of an avenue of exploring your options, getting your license won't will cost you maximum about $2,500 to get your license to operate a drone commercially, and that's something you can add onto your CV and reach out. And if you look on Seek, there's advertisements and roles going out there for drone operators. I know this is a shout out for Surf Lifesaving. Surf Lifesaving's are looking at rolling out a number of pilots across their beaches over the course of next summer. Part of their prerequisite is having a license. So like that's a sort of inroad, and as soon as you got exposure to that, you start working with the industry, within the industry. There's a number of associations within the industry as well. WAUS, Australian Association for Unmanned Systems, around. There's a range of associations which I can share after the call, Dan, to share to the audience.
Yeah,
but
cool.
Yeah, follow a passion. Identify if there's someone within an industry that you have either studied, join a potential association, get trained, and see if there's roles out there, like I said, Surf Lifesaving.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like, if someone does have their license, what does an actual interview look like? Like, how do you guys figure out who's the right drone operator for the job?
Yeah, sure. So it comes back down to experience. Now, we've got a pretty rigorous, I wouldn't say rigorous, but we've got a pretty decent way of testing out everyone. But really, at the end of the day, what an employer within the drone space is going to look for is the total amount of flight hours that you have done, or you are doing on a month-to-month basis, and what sort of environments that you're operating in. So you think about your portfolio for an architect who's opening up their drawings. The portfolio for a drone pilot is exposing them to the data that they've captured. He's exposing them to their portfolio of the amount of flight hours that they've done, where they've flown, how they've flown. And that's something that we're really harnessing at this point in time, is because we've developed this software solution called Curo. Curo manages all your flights, your categories of flights, where you've flown, how you've flown it, what drones you've flown. And that's the other thing, is what is your exposure and what are your categories of drones that you have flown yourself as a individual? Have you flown fixed wing? Have you flown multi-rotors? Have you flown heavy lift drones? What weight category? These are all the criterias and the additional things that you'll look at. But all in all, the drone industry, then there was something that I read the other day, it's about 5,500 full-time equivalent employees are being hired every year within the drone sector. 5,500 in Australia. So it's quite substantial.
Yeah, that is. Do you know how much it's increased over the last couple of years? Like, what do those figures look like compared to 2 years ago? Do you know?
That's a tough question. It's not something I know off the top of my head. It's just something that I read around it. However, like the rate of growth within the industry itself is quite crazy.
Yeah.
The addressable market was something like $100 billion between 2016 and 2021. But now, if you look at what it looks between 2020 and 2040, it's ridiculously high. I wish I had some statistics here to share with you,
but that's still impressive. 5,500 jobs. That's quite a sizable amount.
Yeah, and it's not just pilots though. It's not just pilots. You think about the team that goes behind operating a drone program. And if I was to give you an example, like Surf Lifesaving, one of our key accounts, they've got a chief remote pilot. They've got someone that's looking after their maintenance controlling. They've got a team member that looks after their pilot rostering on the northern side of New South Wales. They've got someone that looks after on the southern New South Wales. Then they've got someone that oversees the incoming and outgoing maintenances of all their drones and their entire fleet. So there's a lot of jobs outside of just the piloting environment that are being created.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear as well, because that then means that people with other, I guess, experiences or skills can then obviously enter the industry, but from a different path. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of programming or algorithms that would go into creating systems and software to complement a drone operation.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And what about, have you looked into the underwater drone space? Is that something that you're interested in?
If I was to name the order of priority for us as a business at this point in time, it would be airborne drones, landborne drones, and then underwater drones. So for us, when we talk drones, we talk those three categories. But underwater drones is something that we're definitely in tune with at this point in time. We've got a couple of customers that have onboarded not only airborne but underwater as well.
Mm.
But yeah, we're well exposed to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because like I've reviewed a few underwater drones on my YouTube channel, and I've thought about some of the applications for how you could utilize it to inspect a pier, or underneath a boat, or even in a swimming pool, for example. Like there are obviously many other opportunities to utilize it, but I found that there were some limitations within the technology, like having that tether, which is like a physical connection, which is then limited,
Yeah,
and potentially you could get caught up underneath something. Like, do
yeah.
you think that industry is going to advance a lot more? Do you feel like it's still in its infancy? Like, where do we think that's going to go?
I think with all technology, like if we just stop and think about like our iPhones today, right? We're up to iPhone 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't, you could probably tell, but you roll back, like iPhones have advanced so much. Everything's advanced so much, and you have a look at the drones and the roving, and I call them roving technology sector.
Mm.
That whole industry is expanding so much. The underwater side, I remember seeing an underwater drone in 2014 when I went to CES, a Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and everyone was amazed as to what it could do. And to be honest, I think the tether was something like 3 meters long. It could only operate via being plugged into a main source and didn't have battery power. So, again, similar to what I said earlier, flight times which were 4 to 5 minutes in 2012 are now 50 to 60 minutes. I think everything's going to see an expansion and especially in the technology. It's just really what it's going to come back down to is adoption of the customer. So how easy can you make the whole process for the customer,
Mm.
and then regulation and the compliance and the record keeping and that side of stuff is going to be the stuff that really holds customers back from looking at these solutions. But if we look at technology as a theme, everything's advancing.
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess within that as well, I wonder whether there's anything that's holding back the growth of either the commercial or consumer space. Do you have any thoughts on what is a bottleneck right now within the drone space,
Um,
if anything?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think the only thing that we've identified today is, it's just that it's going to come back down to making sure the drone cowboys don't do anything too ludicrous.
Mm.
But then also having a look at the regulation, making sure the regulation is well communicated, awareness is being driven. Um, and at the end of the day, I think between the manufacturers and the enablers like our business, I think between the two, it's just going to come back down to advocating for the good of the drone, and
Yeah.
the good of how things are being used and what it looks like today.
But do you think that where we are currently with the state of technology within that space, do you think there's anything that's potentially holding it back? Any limitations with batteries, for example, or the technology that goes behind it, or the power within the drones? Or do you think that they're advancing at a pretty solid rate?
I think everything's advancing at a pretty solid rate. To be honest, I wouldn't really question it. To be honest,
Yeah.
yeah, I think us as a community are advancing quite well,
Mm.
yeah, and yeah, I don't think there's any limiting factors at this point.
Yeah, that's
I think
awesome.
there just needs to be 1 to 2 drone champions in and amongst the industry, that really lead it forward. Like if
Mm.
I was looking at the US market, there's a gentleman by the name of um, John. I can get it to you, but he's really like advocating positively and advocating very well for the industry, and
Mm.
that's something that is required for it to accelerate,
Yeah.
and put behind all that yeah, put behind all of that stuff that gets raised. It's not that positive stuff, all the negative stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that something that you, as a company, is that something that you try to also advocate as well, to have like a best practice way of running?
Yeah. Yeah, and education's the biggest thing at the end of the day. Like if you can educate and nurture your customer to do the right thing within the industry, it's only going to grow the industry. It's going to grow them.
Mm.
For us as a foundation, you know, um, you know, we're a customer centric organization. We want to listen to the customer. That we want the customer to make sure that they listen to our feedback and our view, because we hear from one customer. I'll give you an example. We had an issue with one motor that
Mm.
occurred on one drone, but that one drone also we had sold 50 of them. we were able to communicate on a broad scale to all 50 stakeholders that were invested in this one drone about this one motor issue. So, really making sure that our customers are at the forefront of education, but then also that we can communicate, proactively rather than on a reactive sort of engagement.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's great to hear. That's awesome. And like random curveball, but like in
Here we
the
go.
consumer space, well, it's not too much of a random curveball, but we've been talking a lot
Yeah.
about commercial. Like, do you think within the consumer space, is there anything that you're hearing from your customers that they want from a consumer drone? Like, for example, I know a lot of people talk about a waterproof or a weatherproof drone. So what kind of things are coming
Yeah.
up from your customers?
Well, it's interesting. The waterproof topic's one that is twofold, right? So it's the waterproof is the stuff they want to hear on the commercial side as well. But I think the biggest topic at the moment is the FPV side. I think that is a large topic at this point in time. So the stuff we're hearing is, can I go faster and can I go further? But at the end of the day, we're governed by regulation, and we can't be flying too far, or can't be flying near people, those sorts of things. So I think, as you identified, the waterproof is definitely something that we're hearing from our customers, 100%. But then also it comes back down to, I think there's a lot of people chasing latency at this point in time, especially, there's some amazing systems that are coming out. Obviously, DJI have just released that FPV product. There's a range of other manufacturers that are really exploring the space, especially within the consumer side. However, what we've found most is latency, and I have heard the waterproof stuff, but that's something that I feel like is being addressed and will be addressed very, very shortly. There's a product that's on the horizon from one of the key manufacturers. So watch this space, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. And is there anything that you want to see in the commercial or consumer space?
Um, for me, I like the one thing that I really love hearing about is the stories and the use cases and how drones are being used to either save lives or to do good. That's the one thing that I love seeing. But then also, if there's a solution that people don't necessarily, or if there's an idea out there, bring it forward as to how drones can be used. Because I think sometimes people especially with the innovation, people quite often speak their mind but aren't necessarily heard. There's organizations like ours that are there to say, hey, you know what, let's actually stop and let's think about whether this is an opportunity, whether this is something that can be explored. Because I think there's so much good and so many use cases out there to be developed and built that, at the end of the day, the customer is on the ground working on a day-to-day, being exposed to all these challenges and all these problems, that bringing it forward to an organization like us, who is an enabler, can really potentially solve a greater solution, similar to how we did for the mining organization, similar to how we did for Sydney Water. I think for customers to speak their mind as to how they believe drones can be used, because at the end of the day, it's the people on the ground that know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
What's going on.
Yeah. And we will round it out very soon. I really do appreciate all your time, man, and insight and everything. It's really fascinating to hear the evolution and where it's kind of progressing to. So firstly, where do you guys, I know you've touched on it a little bit, but where do you guys plan on going in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what is your kind of future trajectory with Sphere drones?
If you had asked me that question back in 2012, I said I would not be here right now.
Yeah, I could imagine.
But now that we're really at the forefront of the industry, and now that we're really at the forefront of the industry and where we're going today, I think our strategy hasn't been more rock solid. Has been very rock solid. And is very rock solid. So our plan and our trajectory is we've developed 2 proprietary solutions. So this water sampling solution that I've communicated quite consistently throughout this podcast and through this webinar type environment is one future that we're looking at, is how can we enable onboard water sampling. Now the water quality and monitoring sector globally needs a solution because there's some very manual and laborious tasks. So that's a key initiative that we're rolling with at the moment. So that's Nero, that's our water sampler. The next initiative and the future plan for us is around the compliance and regulation and management of fleets. So fleets back in 2012, there's organisations with 1 to 2 drones. For us, there's now organisations like Surf Life having 187 drones. You know, some of the big mining corporations have 100 drones plus. Some of the police, fire departments, 50, 60 drones. So we're looking at fleet management from a commercial drone operation perspective. And that for us, we've developed a solution called Curo. We're a software engineering team in-house that have built out this system over the course of the last 2 years. And really that's a key enabler for our business and for our team, because every touch point, whether they train through us, they service through us, they get a development built through us, it is all visualized inside our platform as well. So we're closing that loop for that customer. And then if we look at a couple other initiatives, obviously drone delivery and what that looks like, and beyond visual line of sight operation, and flying beyond what your eye can see, is definitely something that we're exploring. So really those 3 initiatives are some future initiatives for us as a business. But at the end of the day, there's nothing stopping us from supporting our customers from that complete customer 360. How can we train you, service, supply? At the end of the day, selling a drone is selling a drone, but it's more to just selling a drone. It's that knowledge, it's that understanding of the industry, it's that use case. Let us hear you out. Let us understand what's going on. And to be completely honest, like we've developed Nero and Curo, our 2 solutions. We'll more than likely develop another 2 over the course of the next 5 to 10 years on the basis of hearing what our customers have to say and responding by creation of a solution.
Yeah,
it's I guess future plans. Again, 5 to 10 years is quite a challenging landmark and milestone to look for. But really for us, we want to be that comprehensive solution provider to organizations.
Yeah, for sure, man. And you know, that's one of those things you can't really predict. Like you said, in 2012, you had no idea that you would be in the position you're in today. It's just something that, you know, you can kind of aspire to do that, or you can manifest it, or you can put all the work in, but it's just, you can't predict what the space will look like in 5 years. But I guess, you know, what I'm hearing from you actually going through the customer's journey and allowing them to go through the experience of buying a drone, learning about the training and the repairs and the servicing of it, that is, like you said, going to create the rich stories where you're going to find out potentially where the pain points are. So I'm sure you've already had some amazing experiences that have helped you develop the business. So it sounds like having that customer focused approach is going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, it's the customer 360. It's looking after the customer on
that's awesome. Yeah, nice.
360 degrees.
Cool. Well, any other thoughts or comments or anything that we missed before we round this out?
But to be honest, not really. Again, Dan, thank you very much for hosting me today. I very much value the opportunity to be able to tell our story, and not only tell my story, but also, you know, advocate for the industry. It's a goal of mine to be a bit more awareness focused with not only our business but the industry. So I guess fly safe, and at the end of the day, if there's something that we can help with, feel free to reach out. And I actually look forward to sharing this amongst our channels shortly, because I think, you know, it's important that people hear, you know, not only advancements within the industry, but then also like where not only businesses are taking drones today, but how they're using them, where they're going, how can efficiencies be created. But there's so much to be done within the industry, and it's great. I'm grateful to have people like you alongside me to be able to advocate positively.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, man. I really do appreciate your time, and I love the energy and focus that Sphere Drones has for the industry, but also for that customer experience as well, which is really awesome. And just the final note for people out there that might be interested in the job opportunities that you were talking about before, where would they go for that? Yeah,
so on our website we've got a careers page. So if you go to spheredrones.com.au, at the very top of the menu, we've got a careers page. So we're looking from anywhere from people that are solution engineers and sales engineers right the way through to sales team members, technicians, but then also software engineers. So, you know, I think within the next month or so, we're onboarding about another 3-4 team members, which is quite exciting. And not only in New South Wales and WA, but Queensland, Victoria, We've got some team members starting. So, for us, we see ourselves as a Australian-wide entity, and hopefully this COVID stuff can go away and let us get back on the travel bandwagon and, get in front of our customers again. But, it's been a fantastic time to learn and, fine-tune our structures. So, if anyone is interested, go to spheredrones.com.au and you'll be able to see the job advertisements there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Dan. Have a great evening.
You too.